Next question is from Jamal. He asks, hey Adam, I really like your new practice session videos from when you were getting ready for the Meinl recordings. However, you said the songs were about 90% written for those videos. So I was wondering what these songs sounded like at the very beginning of the writing process. How do you approach writing drum parts to a song from day one? So that's a great question, man. And yeah, those practice videos, yeah, the songs were about 90% written. So if you watch any of them, I think only Wet Texan is out right now. It was done maybe 2 weeks to a month before I went and did the final recording. So the songs were pretty dialed in, structures were all done. It was just a matter of working out fills and transitions and small things like that. But you're asking, what did the songs look like the first day that I got the track? And let me tell you exactly the setup here. All three of those tracks that I did for my last trip to Nashville to record for Meinl, all three of those songs were sent to me completed. So I had no part in the writing process of the actual song. I wrote all of the drums, but they weren't written while the song was being written. I was handed a complete drumless song, and then I had to write parts against it. So that's sort of how I was starting. So let me take you through what day one would look like on that. You definitely, for me, I always begin with just structure. First things first, I have to be able to survive this song. So I will play the most generically appropriate thing that I can play for that entire song. That means if I can play a basic rock beat and it sounds okay, it's kind of sort of fits, then I'm playing a basic rock beat. If it requires that I go into halftime, then I go into a halftime basic rock beat. If a fill is supposed to go here, I do the easiest one that comes to mind for that particular section. I'm not trying to be creative initially. I'm just trying to survive the song and ultimately just keep time in the song while adhering to the structure. And more than anything, what you're really doing is you're building the map of the song in your own mind. So you know that this section is 4 bars, this section is 8 bars, this section is 16 bars. And as you get that structure down, like you get the map that is the song, then you start layering on some of the other textures. So another huge texture, for example, would be dynamics. Does the volume change from section to section? Now, I'm not talking about fills yet. I'm not talking about the ghost notes within a particular groove. We're not there yet. More so, like if there was a volume rating of like 1 through 10 for each section, try to give each section a rating. So I kind of know what to do with my volume level as different sections of the song pass. So that would be one layer. If you wanted to do another layer, maybe you would start working on fills. So you pick, 2 or 3 sections of the song where you go, you know what, right in this section, I'm really feeling this kind of fill. Maybe it's just single strokes down the toms, easy sort of fill. So you would begin to include that every time you go through the song, right? So now you're sort of beginning to build and stack different things on top of the song. So you start with your map, then maybe you do dynamics. So you have your map of what section happens when. Then we start controlling the volume as we move through the song. And then we start picking out little moments where each time this happens, we go from the A section to the B section. I know that I'm going to do this fill. So we start including that in these passes as we go through the song over and over. We start stacking things up and building these layers. And ultimately, the layers become more complex as you repeat this song hundreds of times, right? And so part of your job, I think, is to pay attention as you're building those layers, to see the song, or rather to hear the song with fresh eyes as often as you can. And that's oftentimes impossible to do in one day, but like revisiting the song the next day and saying, okay, so yesterday I picked this fill, this fill, this fill, and that's kind of how I've been playing it. Do I like this? Does this sound good to me still, or are there tweaks that I could make? What am I hearing that I might like a little bit better? Have I tried, should I try triplet subdivisions instead of 30-second note subdivisions? Does that work? So it's a lot of like toying around with the concepts that you're using as you're doing the writing. But again, you're just making these layers more complex as you go. And as you spend 1, 2, 3, 4 months on one particular song, the layers of complexity get thick, right? Like there ends up being a whole lot of things that you have memorized that you do inside of there. But for me, that's kind of what the entire process looks like until I've built up these layers, so thick that it ends up being a pretty complex song with a whole lot of really specific moments and things that happen in there. But it definitely doesn't start that way. So I'll give you one more example. I said I would use like a basic rock beat. the most generically appropriate thing you could get away with is what you start doing. And so one of those layers of complexity that you could add would be like toying around with the kick drums. So for the chorus, you're playing a basic rock beat to start with, but what happens if we move the backbeat? Instead of on the 4, it's on the E of 4. You move it 1/16th note forward. Okay, try that out. Do you like it? Maybe. It's permutate, try another snare. And so you experiment with a lot of these different variables until you find one that sits really well. And that's a new layer on top of the song. And so we're going to start doing that every time now. And these just stack up. You could do this with kick drums. You could do it with ghost notes. You could do it with particular cymbal accents and crashes. I mean, everything, right? But hopefully that answer makes sense, man. Start really, really simple. Start with your map, your timeline. Make sure you can survive the structure, and then begin adding those layers of complexity one at a time. So maybe you'd have a whole day for fills, a whole day where you're working on where the kick drums can or can't go, and another day on dynamics and volume, just all of the categories, you know? So that's a great question, Jamal. It's one of those things that's going to be different from person to person, but I think for the most part, the description that I just gave you is going to apply to a lot of different people, a majority of people, I think. If you have a different writing process, I would love to know. I don't know what other way there is necessarily to write a song, write drum parts to a song, unless you were to just completely rearrange the order that you're doing all of that stuff. Like if you like starting with fills first or something, I mean, yeah, I'd like to hear an explanation for that one. But yeah, it's a good question, man. Hopefully that makes sense. Thank you so much for watching this clip from the Orlando Drummer Podcast. If you're looking for more content like this, you are formally invited to come join me on orlandodrummer.com. It's an online education platform, very much in the style of Netflix, and there you'll find over 160 hours of content waiting for you, ranging from in-depth lesson packs to audio and video masterclasses and everything in between. I'd love to have you on board. We'll see you guys there.